One Globe, Major Dalbir Singh, dignitaries on the dais, Lord Lumba, Shri Shalabh Kumar, Shri Harjeev Singh, Dr. Agi, distinguished guests from all around the globe, ladies and gentlemen. May I begin by thanking One Globe in general and Major Dalbir Singh in particular for having invited me here for the 6th meeting of the forum. The world today is daily becoming a smaller place. And what better to illustrate it than the fact that an election took place on the other side of the world, in America, and it is the hottest topic of discussion on this side of the world in India. And Mr. Shailesh Kumar has given an overall perspective of what the Trump administration is going to do or plans to do in the near future. America has always been, I suppose, an influence the world over. And one does hope that it continues to be that influence and that it does not inhibit itself to within the boundaries of its country. Be that as it may, today we are assembled here in New Delhi in the 6th annual meeting with all distinguished gentlemen from all across various countries as well as India. I just want to say something about India, and the speakers from India before me have touched upon a subject which very few people generally touch on these days. It is the growing urban population and the migration of the rural population to urban areas. And when they speak about this, I really appreciate the fact that they have chosen to do so, and I wish to also just elaborate a little on that score. For centuries, India has lived in the rural hinterland. Very few people came to the cities in search of jobs and better opportunities. Right from the 11th century onwards, people came to India looking for better prospects. The Mongols came, the Mughals came, the British came. And finally, we had our own government after independence in 1947. All throughout history, people have come to India and they have been assimilated. They have become Indian. And when we say Hindu, it comes from the word Sindhu. Those that crossed the river Sindh and came to India considered all those living the other side of the Sindhu river to be Hindus. And so we got this name Hindustan. But Hindustan is not Hindu by religion. It is a diverse country, as those who live here will understand. It is all the major religions of the world, and most of the minor ones as well. And over the years, all these people who have assimilated into India as such, or Hinduism as such, or Hindustan as such, have helped develop India post-independence. Before independence, people lived in villages. The Mongols came, they limited themselves to cities, went back. The Mughals came, they lived and ruled from Delhi and got assimilated. The British came, they had 4 presidencies, Calcutta, Madras, Delhi, and Bombay. and they lived and ruled from cities. But 90% of India lived in the villages, still lives in its villages. They were not affected by either what the Mongols did or what the British did. They had these villages going for thousands of years. They had their own cobbler, they had their own priest, they had their own tillers, kisans, the farmers, the peasantry lived in the villages. And as Mr. Harjeev Singh quoted Robert Frost, I would like to quote Oliver Goldsmith. When he said that princes and lords may come or they may fade, a breath can make them as a breath has made. But a bold peasantry, a country's pride, once destroyed, can never be supplied. Today, India is still vibrant because of the population, the peasantry that is now moving upwards. It's moving into cities which are overflowing at the seams in the hope of a better life. While the British ruled India, there was no pressure on the cities as such. So the cities had some infrastructure which was adequate. But with the migration from the rural hinterland to the urban areas, we have pressure now on our urban centers. I am told by those that are in the know that today in India, 31% of our population is living in urban areas. It's a lot. When 90% used to live in villages, today 31% is living in urban areas as per the 2011 census. Today we are in 2017, so the 31% might have become 32, 33, maybe 34% for all I know. We will only know when the next census takes place. But they are migrating. And I'm told, again, by those that are in the know, that by 2050, 70% of the world's population will be living in urban centers. That's a huge, mind-boggling figure. And for India especially so, because we have 1.25 billion people living in our country. And by 2050, I don't know, it might become 1.5 billion, maybe more. So we have to ensure that our cities become livable if India is to prosper. And today our children, the demographic dividend that we talk about, we have 160 million children. Apart from the fact that was already touted from this stage here, that 65% of our population is below 35 years of age. But of those that are below 35 years of age, 160 million are children. 47 million of them live in urban areas. 8 million of them live in slums. Now slums are breeding grounds for violence and what have you all over the world, as we know from history and past experience. So we have to ensure that the slum population gets its rights of education, cleanliness, good food, water, drinking water, sewerage, septage. All these things are made available so that the adverse effects of living in slums or in urban centers do not affect our country's progress in the years to come. Now, we have two main thrust areas from the Modi government side ever since it came into power. I'd like to dwell upon them for a little while. But before I dwell on that, I would like to say this, that India missed the Industrial Revolution. Cities in Europe, Britain, They had an influx of population coming into the industrial areas which are centered around the so-called now modern cities. Over a period of time, 100 years maybe, 50 years at least. And so the cities were able to cope with the population that was coming into them over a few decades. But for India, they're coming in by hordes. Every year, every month, every day. And so we have to plan accordingly in today's scenario to ensure that India does not lose its demographic dividend. And we only have 20 years to do so. By then, most of the population that is today young will become old. And we will have lost that opportunity that fate has provided us. For the first time around, in many decades, India has had a chance through a government that has been elected by the people, giving it a majority and the mandate to take hard decisions. We have taken some of those hard decisions. There is, of course, going to be resentment and opposition when you take hard decisions. Either you flow with the wind or you confront the wind if it's going adverse for the country. So one thinks that this government has been able to try and build India into a position where it can confront all adverse effects that have taken place in India over the past few decades. Now, like I was saying that we have smart cities and we have Amrut. Cities by themselves do not have the infrastructure as of today, as I've mentioned earlier. They don't have the money either. So how do you cope with this influx of population that is coming into your cities day by day, hour per hour? You set a competition amongst them. That is what the plan of the government is. That we said that we will have 100 smart cities comparable to, say, in today's modern terms, maybe to Shanghai or to Beijing, because these are the modern cities, to New York or maybe Chicago, well, maybe not Chicago, or to Washington. Have them developed in such a fashion that you have pathways for people to walk in. You have parks for youth to do their youthful exercises in. You have a law and order situation which is adequate. And you have clean water and food to drink and eat. And you have an education system that will be nationalistic in character. And if I may digress a little, today India stands also at another crossroads. The crossroads of the legacy of the British Raj and what was India or the centuries before the British came to rule India. So the education system is another one that we are at odds with. Most people sitting here today in India, of Indian origin now have access to the westernized influences. But this is not alone the India. We have also the cultural influences in the rural hinterland. That is also part of India. And we have a middle class, which we never had 50 years ago, of around 400 million. It's a lot of people. As against earlier when there was no middle class. So this middle class is influenced by the Western cultures. Western influences have come to prevail in their mind and hearts. And the rest of the country, perhaps, has influences which have not been handed down to them through the media or through association with urban centers. So this is the conflict in education, it is the conflict in everyday life as well. The urban India and the rural India have got to gel and have got to mix. They're doing so. That's why there's a little bit of strife politically as well as socially and culturally. So like I was saying, we have smart cities and we have decided to have 100 smart cities in India. 60 of them have been announced. And I'm glad to say that all those 60 smart cities that have been announced, well, most of them have prepared a special purpose vehicle, by virtue of which they will exercise those decisions how to make that city smart. The SPV, the special purpose vehicle, is funded 50% by the government of India and 50% by the local urban body or the state government. Now these centers, I'm glad to say, have started work on the SPVs, and of the 60 cities that have so far been announced by the government of India in a fair selection process, have gone about making their SPVs and have collected, the last time I heard, 1,35,000 worth of projects. They've collected that much funds, or have been promised that much funds. They may not have come into the SPV so far, but they have been promised that amount of funds. And I suppose when we announce the rest 40, we'll have a little more money coming into India from various sources, maybe funding from abroad, maybe from banks, maybe from private enterprise, maybe from the state governments themselves. Once the competition starts amongst these cities, 5 years down the line, I think that we could have cities which could be called reasonably smart. And once the competition starts and the other cities that are left out, the 4,000 odd statutory cities that we have on our agenda, they will also start a competition amongst themselves, and so we could have these centers as well developed as reasonably able cities to be lived in. And that is how we want to diversify the influx of people coming into so-called metropolitan areas like Delhi, Madras, Bombay, Calcutta, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Let it be diversified. Let the population move towards the urban centers, but let it move in smaller areas where the adequate facilities are available. If they are available, so nobody wants to come in from Bihar and start living in Delhi. We have no real relationship with the people living in Delhi. So we have this thing that is called the Smart Cities Initiative taken by the Modi government, and I think we are reasonably well in on the way of ensuring that cities become smart in the near future. We also have something called the Amrut mission. It's a 5-year mission, Atal Mission for Urban Transformation, Amrut. And what it does is that for the 5 years from now on, or from 2 years ago, for 5 years it will concentrate on providing water, basic necessity for living, for health, for ensuring that our children come out healthy when they reach adolescence and come into the senior years. So we need water which is pure, drinkable. This is the first priority of Amrut. Then water also has its own post-use dimensions. You require sewerage, you require septage, you require these things in the next 5 years. In fact, we required them yesterday, but they were not being addressed. We required them today, immediately, and I am hoping that through Amrut mission, which is again funded partly by the government of India, that we will be able to at least provide them adequate water, clean water, so that our children grow up as healthy human beings. I don't know whether I am right or wrong. I'd like to, before I end, I'd just like to say this, that those that live in India are today proud to be Indian. It never was so some time ago. It has become a nation that is proud of itself, that thinks that it has a future of itself, that has all sections and all religions of the world working together to ensure that India comes and finds its rightful place in the 21st century. But when we talk about health, prosperous nations, let us say, for an example, I don't know if somebody is from Japan, and I don't mean any disrespect in that sense, but Japan in the Second World War was fairly annihilated by the bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and what have you. The average size of a Japanese was 5 foot 2 inches at the time of the Second World War. Today, the average size of a Japanese individual, male or female, is much higher. Physically taller, better, I suppose, disciplined, and Japan has prospered. India, on the other hand, had an average size of a human being during the Second World War, or even prior to that, of 5 foot 4 inches. That was the average height of a male Indian in 1945. I'm not sure that holds today. The health parameters, the sort of average Indians' physical standards, I think, have gone down. Because we were a poor nation, we still are a poor nation. And the government is the only agency that is going to look after the social aspects of the country's citizens. Everybody else thinks of money first, money makes the mayor go. So, make money while the hay shines. The government of India takes flak, but is responsible for meeting the social obligations of a people who have elected it to this position, so that today we are able to take those decisions, perhaps in line with what Mr. Kumar had said earlier, which may not be popular all told within the country, but are nevertheless necessary for the country to prosper. And I think this government is committed, and let the people decide, and I hope that in the future, India can meet and find its rightful place in the Committee of Nations, and I'm glad that I've been given this opportunity to explain, at least in part, what India's hoping to achieve and what India is all about, to all the gentlemen that have assembled here from various parts of the country. Thank you.